Michigan's zombie nightmare, the shocking truth behind the haunting outbreak today. In a sleepy town where everything seemed ordinary, a sinister shadow loomed just beyond the trees. Reports came in fast and furious, people vanishing, only to reappear with pale skin and sunken eyes, as if life had seeped out of them. Locals began to whisper about bizarre sightings under the dying light of day. They said the reanimated would shamble through the streets at midnight, moaning like lost souls. It was a summer like no other, with heat that felt wrong and the sky painted a foreboding shade of gray, hinting at something deeply unsettling. Just beneath the surface point one night, a lone figure stumbled into the gas station, hair matted, clothes torn. The clerk, a young guy with wide eyes, couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It was like this stranger flickered in and out, sometimes matching shadows falling just a beat behind. The man claimed to have seen it with his own eyes. The local cemetery, with its tombstones shifted, cracked open, and something crawling up from the ground. The words chilled the air. The clerk's mouth ran dry. By dawn, panic swept through the town like wildfire. People heard the soft moans echoing in the night, drifting through their windows, making neck hairs stand on end. Mothers clutched their kids a little tighter, and old folks foraged through their memories, trying to recall if they ever had such dread in their bones. Authorities arrived, but how could they explain something that felt like it belonged to a horror film? They insisted it was a prank or a mass hallucination, but deep down, the whole town could sense it. Something was breathing just beyond the edge of reality, lurking. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As night fell again, the town sat in an eerie silence, broken only by distant howls that sent shivers racing down spines. In hushed tones, neighbors convened under flickering street lamps, each face marred with fear. Could they be next? As the clock struck 12, the ground trembled slightly, a low rumble that echoed like a heartbeat. The shadows deepened, and then a figure emerged from the fog, its face half hidden, but everyone felt its gaze piercing through the darkness. Was it one of them? Or something far more sinister? The air grew thick with dread, and no one dared to breathe as the question loomed in the air: what does it want? The figure shuffled closer, a mere silhouette against the backdrop of the town. Gasps echoed from the small gathering of desperate residents. Eyes widened, hearts pounded, and instinct told them to flee, but their bodies remained rigid, held hostage by fear. The dampness of the night hung thick around them, seeping into their clothes and making it hard to breathe. Is that? Someone whispered, barely audible, dread lacing their voice. Hope wrestled with panic. Could it be someone they knew? The figure suddenly lifted its head, and the streetlights flickered as if warning them. The face was gaunt, eyes hollow, a grotesque parody of the human form it once was. Help me, came the raspy plea, a haunting sound that chilled the bone. A flicker of humanity, just as the townsfolk were about to bolt. But it wasn't just helplessness, no, it was a weapon against them, a lure to draw them closer. What do you want? One brave soul called out, their voice trembling but unyielding. Save us, it rasped. Then, dramatically, it fell to the ground, limbs sprawled out as if beckoning them to come near. Whispers erupted among the crowd. Could they trust this creature? As if sensing their hesitation, the figure lifted its arm, revealing a wrist marked with deep, angry scabs, a clear sign of struggle. It wasn't a hallucination or a trick of the mind. This was real fear, visibly wearing down those who had once lived a peaceful life. Suddenly, without warning, another figure broke through the fog, emerging from the cemetery across the street. And then another, and another. Panic swept through the townspeople like wildfire, more faces, all bearing the same haunted expression. Moans filled the air, the sound crescendoing into a ghastly choir. They shambled forth, dragging their feet, aching desperately for something just out of reach. "We need to get out of here," a woman screamed, her voice laced with pure terror as she turned to run from the gathering dawn of horrors. But the shadows were everywhere now. They tightened around the crowd, encasing them. Hope faded from their faces, replaced with a dawning realization. These revenants were not just victims. They seemed drawn to the very fear radiating from them, like moths to a flame. For each scream, the ranks of the undead deepened, their hollow eyes reflecting dark desires. Then, a voice rose from the back, a young boy, no older than 12. "They need help. They're trapped." His words struck a chord in some, yet the fear held most like a tight noose. "And how do we help them?" Another shouted back, raw frustration mingling with terror. "They're dead." The boy's wide eyes shimmered in the pale light. "But what if they're not? What if we can save them?" His innocence stood in stark contrast to the swirling chaos, a spark trying to ignite a burgeoning hope amid the dread. As the figures drew closer, hands outstretched, the townsfolk curled in on themselves, debating survival over compassion. Shadows clamped tighter, and the boy squeezed through the throng, approaching the lead figure. "Stop!" someone yelled. "Don't!" But his small voice cut through the cacophony, igniting uncertainty among the undead. Their movements faltered, the air thickening with tension. An unsettling silence fell, leaving only the boy and the most wretched of the reanimated facing each other. Then, without warning, a sound unlike any other erupted from the cemetery. A low growl, deep and guttural, drawing the attention of all. What emerged from the shadows next would change everything. Would the townspeople confront their deepest fears in that moment, or succumb to the chilling reality of an insatiable terror about to unfold? The growl intensified, reverberating through the damp air like an ominous drum. The townspeople shifted nervously, eyes darting from the boy to the source of the sound. The figure before him, once pleading for help, now turned its head as if sensing a greater threat, its hollow eyes widening with a mix of fear and expectation. From the shroud of fog, a monstrous shape emerged. Its towering frame loomed in the moonlight, muscles rippling beneath grimy skin. Claw-like hands hung at its sides, dripping with a thick, dark substance. People screamed, their voices blending into a chaotic symphony of dread. This was no ordinary zombie, it was something born of nightmares, a creature that thrived on fear and despair. "Run!" the woman yelled again, her voice breaking, and the crowd exploded into a frenzy. Panic overtook them as they surged back, limbs flailing, the weight of desperation pushing them off balance. The boy stood frozen, his eyes riveted on the creature, a mix of awe and horror etched on his young face. "Stay! Please, we can help!" he pleaded, but his words were drowned out by the screams that ricocheted off the buildings lining the street. The undead faltered, puzzled by the boy's unexpected bravery. They hesitated, their lifeless fingers twitching in a flicker of hesitation. Then, the monstrous figure lunged, its speed defying logic. It was a blur of shadow that tore through the crowd, snatching an elderly man from the fringes. The man's terrified shriek cut through the night-dense silence. The blood-curdling sound reverberated in the air like a tolling bell, marking the moment their old lives slipped away forever. "Help him!" the boy shouted against the growing din, but the townspeople were paralyzed, frozen in a primitive state of survival. They stumbled over one another, desperate to flee, minds racing but feet unwilling to move. It was as if time itself held them captive, forcing them to confront not only the present horror but the ghosts of their own failures. The creature that had taken the man turned its gaze back to the boy, and for a split second, he thought he saw something within its soulless eyes, an echo of understanding, perhaps. It wasn't just a monster, it felt trapped in its own horror. But that glimpse vanished as quickly as it came, replaced by a primal hunger that surged forward, driven by power and fear alike. With a surge of courage, the boy stepped toward the reanimated horde. "They're scared too. They need help." His words echoed across the chaos, an unlikely beacon in a storm of despair. Several undead faltered, their eerily beautiful yet horrifying forms drawing closer. They looked at him as though they could feel the slivers of hope emanating from his tiny frame. Maybe they did reflect the fears and anguishes that had once lived within the town's simple lives. Suddenly, the darkness seemed to shift. From the cemetery, an ancient oak tree groaned as if awakening from a long slumber. Its gnarled branches beckoned, casting ominous shadows onto the ground where the boy stood defiantly, seemingly untouched by panic. "Help!" A voice came from the trees, a woman, trembling but alive. The boy's heart raced as his eyes met her gaze. "We can save them!" he screamed, desperately trying to convince the others. But what began as a small ripple of hope sent a shiver through the undead, nudging them like knives in the fog. And from behind that towering figure, more forms began to emerge, pushing through the curtain of twilight. All eyes turned again to the street's end. This time, it wasn't just the zombies that would confront the townsfolk's deepest fears. What lay ahead would push them further into their darkest corners. The clock ticked down, and a choice was looming: to fight or to flee. Would the boy's bravery ignite a spark of resistance, or would the impending darkness swallow them whole? They wouldn't have long to decide. The tension in the air thickened like fog, enveloping the street in a suffocating embrace. The boy's heart pounded in his chest as his eyes darted from the monstrous creature to the desperate townsfolk, their faces twisted in terror and disbelief. Time felt suspended, caught in the weight of their choices: fight for their lives or succumb to the encroaching darkness. With a quick glance at the woman in the trees, the boy felt a fire ignite within him. "Listen!" he shouted, voice shaking but resolute. "If we work together, we can save them." His words cut through the panic. Several villagers paused, fear etched on their faces giving way to uncertainty. They exchanged frantic looks, unsure of what to do next. That flicker of hesitation against the monstrous chaos was all the boy needed. "The more we run, the more they'll hunt us. We have to try." The towering figure shifted restlessly, claws scraping the ground, remnants of the past echoing through the air. It was hungry, and the hunger was pulsing. Other creatures drew closer, lurching into the flickering lantern light, eyes glinting with insatiable desire. The boy's message had resonated, but would it be enough? "I said run!" shouted a lanky man from the crowd. His eyes were wide with panic, fingers twitching as if ready to bolt at a moment's notice. "They'll kill us all!" In that moment, a piercing shriek tore through the chaos, a haunting wail that sent a shiver down everyone's spine. It came from the old tombstone near the oak. "Help me!" the voice croaked, low and sorrowful, echoing the prayers of the undead. "See?" The boy pressed on, his voice rising like the tide. "They're trapped. Just like us." More figures began to emerge from the shadows, more than the boy had ever seen, shrunken, frail bodies shuffling forward, drawn by the noise. But it wasn't just the undead that faded from the shadows. The eerie mist swirled, revealing a glimpse of something else, something human and utterly disheartening. A group of townsfolk, eyes hollow and minds lost, dragged themselves forward against their will, as if the night's horror had stolen their very spirit. The boy's stomach twisted. They were not only facing monsters, they were staring down the ghosts of their own community, victims of their negligence, drawn to the chaos and despair. The woman behind the tree screamed, "No! They're not gone! They still need us!" But fear clawed at the crowd again. "They're already dead! Let us go!" Another voice rang out, heavy with shadows of defeat, as villagers turned to flee, some tripping over one another in blind panic. The boy felt that fire inside him dim, but he wouldn't let it die. "No!" he shouted again, adrenaline coursing through his veins, as he stepped forward into the open space between life and decay. "If we don't take a stand, they'll take all of us. We have to fight." Suddenly, the lead zombie lunged at him. The boy's breath caught in his throat. But instead of batting him down, it stopped, its hollow eyes dull, flickering with some forgotten warmth. For an instant, the night halted. The boy and the creature locked eyes, and he swore he could almost feel its longing for release, trapped in a cycle of despair. But then the moment shattered, replaced by a howl as the creature's thirst for life surged back. The townspeople shifted uneasily, caught between horror and hope, their breaths mingling in the cold night air. Would they rally at the boy's courage, or would they scatter under the pressure of fear? And then, from the depths of the murky shadows, more forms began to shuffle, not just the undead but something the boy could not yet comprehend more disturbing than the nightmares that roamed the streets. What else have we unleashed? He murmured to himself, just as the temperature around him dropped sharply, captivating everyone's attention. The decisions they made now would echo through the darkness in ways they couldn't fathom. As the crowd writhed in confusion, the boy's heart raced not just in fear of the undead, but of what would soon emerge, coiled and waiting in the darkness. What new terror lurked just beyond the shadows, and would they find the strength to face it together? Time was running out. The boy's heart thundered in his chest, a frantic rhythm of fear and urgency. The air around him felt electric, charged with something far darker than a simple night gone wrong. As the first pale light crept from the depths of the gloom, new figures began to materialize, grotesque against the stillness. They swayed and twisted, emerging from the haunting mist with terrible grace, like dancers in a macabre ballet of despair. "Look out!" a voice screamed from the back. It was panic-drenched and thin, and as people turned to look, the effect was instantaneous. A wave of terror washed over them. The boy's eyes widened. They weren't just zombies anymore. There were beings that hummed with an ancient darkness, faces marked with anguish yet oddly familiar. They drifted towards him and the others, their movements slow but purposeful, as if they wanted to reveal secrets long buried beneath the weight of their ethereal existence. "Stay together!" the boy shouted, his voice barely reaching the edges of the crowd, swallowed by the echoes of despair. He willed them to muster any courage left, to see what he could see, the pain of the lost and the embers of what remained of their humanity. But horror gripped tight. The lanky man who had first shouted to flee broke into a sprint, propelled by adrenaline and fear. Each step shattered the tense standoff, a ripple of chaos rushing through the onlookers. With renewed terror, several others followed, colliding with the oncoming tide of horror. "Don't run!" the boy called out, desperation clawing at his throat. "You're drawing them in." He turned to the woman in the trees, her figure now a beacon of hope amid the storm. "What do we do?" he pleaded, raking his hands through his tangled hair. The shadows shifted again, and he felt the cold breath of the creatures sliding past him. "Hold on to each other," she shouted, her voice ringing clear like a bell. "If we are going to survive this, we must face it together." Just as he nodded, a dark shape flew from the murky depths, capturing the boy's attention. It was a massive beast, unlike the rotting corpses around them. This one was cloaked in velvet darkness, with eyes that glowed red like molten fury. It lumbered, thrumming with a primal energy that set his teeth on edge. "What is that?" someone whispered, their voice trembling as they pointed a shaking finger. The boy swallowed hard, heart racing as he registered the beast's sharp teeth, gleaming in the waning lantern light. "It must be the source," he breathed, fear mingling with a cold resolve. Whatever unleashed these creatures, it brought this too. The creature snarled, its sound unlike anything he'd heard before. It echoed through the air, reverberating against the buildings, a challenge that clawed at their sanity. "Together!" the woman urged again, stepping away from the trees, her determination illuminating the dark. "If we all link arms, we can create a barrier between it and the rest of us." The boy watched as some reluctantly agreed. They formed a chain, creating a small circle of trembling bodies. His heart surged with a glimmer of hope, but the bright light was snuffed out as the creature charged at them, a blur of fur and rage. "Now!" he shouted, adrenaline pumping like wildfire through his veins. But just as their linked arms solidified, a sudden crash erupted behind them, and a blinding flash of light flickered across the street. The weight of dread intensified as they all turned. From beyond the shadows, a new figure stepped forward, cloaked in shimmering mystery. Was it friend or foe? Fear wrapped its fingers around the boy's throat, squeezing tightly. They had only moments to decide if they were to trust this new arrival, or brace for another nightmare to unfold. "What have you brought with you?" he whispered, eyes wide with disbelief. And then, just as clarity began to set in, another scream pierced the air, drawing closer. The boy's eyes went wide with terror. They were running out of time, but what awaited them next could change everything or destroy them all. A heartbeat pounded in the boy's ears, drowning out the sounds of chaos surrounding him. The figure stepping into the light was draped in glimmering fabric, a cloak that shimmered like 1,000 stars caught in time. The tension in the air thickened, a discordant symphony of fear and uncertainty. "Who are you?" he called out, straining to see the face hidden beneath the hood. In that moment, the creature paused, its violent energy coiling back like a snake caught off guard. "I come seeking answers," the cloaked figure spoke, a voice smooth and low, reverberating in the stillness. "But I also bring danger." The boy's heart raced even faster. Of all the things he'd expected, this was not it. "We can't deal with more danger. We're already fighting for our lives." The figure stepped closer, and as the light illuminated their features, the boy's breath caught. The face was familiar, someone he thought he'd lost to the shadows long ago. "It's me," the figure said softly, a hint of sorrow in their eyes. "Anya." "Anya?" he whispered, disbelief tinged with hope. "You're alive?" But the relief was short-lived. Without warning, the creature reared back, emboldened by their distraction, before launching itself with an animalistic growl. "Get down!" Anya shouted, her voice slicing through the air as she sprang forward, magic sparking from her fingers. With a flick of her wrist, a radiant barrier formed, illuminating the darkness and pushing the beast back, though not by much. "Link up!" the boy yelled, and now, he'd never felt more desperate. He felt the weight of the lives wrapped around him, their fears mingling with his own. They needed hope, something to hold on to. "Do you know what they want?" he asked Anya amidst the swirling chaos, their bond a fragile tether. "Why are they here?" "They're drawn to fear," she breathed, her concentration wavering as she focused on keeping the barrier intact. "And there's an ancient source, linked to this place, pulsing with darkness. If we find it and destroy it, we can end this chaos." The boy nodded, his mind racing. "But how?" Anya's gaze flicked across the crowd. "The older graves, there's something beneath them. This isn't just a coincidence." In that moment, he understood the markings on the gravestones, the whispers of the air that hinted at buried truths. "We have to go there. That's where we can fight back." But just as they began to turn, another scream erupted, echoing off the buildings, chilling their bones. "Look!" Anya pointed as shadows darted from the dark, figures emerging from the fog, their eyes glimmering with a hunger that made the boy's skin crawl. "More are coming!" Panic surged through him, but he forced it down, gritting his teeth. "We have to protect each other. Anya, can you hold the barrier and guide them?" "Yes, but we must move quickly. I can't hold them off for long." The frightened crowd surged forward, hearts pounding. The boy felt each pulse against his own as they stumbled together, trying to forge a path through impending doom. But suddenly, the darkness split open, creating a path to the graves. An eerie light pulsed rhythmically from the earth, beckoning them like a moth to flame. "Is that?" The boy started, fear crawling up his spine. "Exactly what we're looking for," Anya said, determination flashing in her eyes. "But it looks unstable." They took tentative steps towards the glow, hands grasping tightly at each other. Yet they were not alone. The creature lurked behind, catching its breath, and as the beasts closed in, they tested the strength of their resolve. "We need to move faster." The words flowed from the boy's lips like a chant against despair, but time was slipping away, pulling them deeper into the abyss. With trembling hands, Anya embraced the light, channeling it, and for a brief moment, he felt hope surge like a wave crashing against the shore. But just as they reached the heart of darkness, the world around them exploded into chaos. The ground shook, the air crackled, and shadows rushed from every corner. "Get ready!" Anya shouted, but the boy couldn't shake the feeling that they'd crossed a line, one that could never be uncrossed. Time was fracturing, and only then did he realize this was not just a fight for survival. They were about to face something far worse, the truth itself. What lay beneath was not just an ancient source of darkness, it was an awakening bound to change everything. His breath caught, a horrifying thought piercing through the chaos. "Anya, what if we're not meant to stop it but to set it free?" The deep rumble of the earth whispered ominous secrets, wrapping him in dread as the light began to fade. Would they save themselves, or unleash something far worse? The ground trembled beneath them, a living entity shaking in protest as shadows twisted and curled like smoke around their ankles. The pulsating light felt alive, its golden glow an alluring siren's call amid the chaos. He could see the glimmers of hope reflected in Anya's eyes, but they were quickly fading, replaced by a fierce determination. "Anya!" he called out, desperation clawing at his throat. "We have to get to the source. Now!" "Right." Anya's voice was a battle cry, but he could hear the strain behind it. She channeled magic into the barrier, arcs of energy flickering dangerously as the creatures shifted closer, their eyes glowing with malevolence. The boy's heart raced. Panic swelled in the crowd, palpable and thick, as the shadows closed in. Some of the frightened faces gazed desperately at him, looking for a leader, someone who could calm the storm brewing in their hearts. "We're stronger together," he shouted, a line drawn in the sand against despair. "We fight in numbers. Follow me." With a fierce roar, he surged ahead toward the glowing graves, Anya right at his side, the barrier shimmering as it repelled their pursuers. He could feel the heat of the energy radiating towards him, reassuring yet terrifying. As they reached the nearest grave, Anya placed her hands upon the cool stone. "There's something here, I can feel it," she whispered, her eyes wide with determination. "Help me," he urged, jumping beside her. Their fingers met over the ancient markings, and as they pressed together, a jolt of static surged through them. Waves of energy pulsed into the earth, and the ground resonated like a drum, long-hidden secrets trying to emerge from their slumber. Suddenly, the shadows lunged forward, their snarling masses crashing against the barrier, testing its strength. The world swirled around them, screams blending into a nightmarish symphony. "Faster!" Anya cried, her voice strained as the barrier began to crack, webs of darkness threading through like predators closing in for the kill. "We need to release the light. On 3. He counted. 1, 2, 3. They threw their combined energy down into the grave, their spirits intertwining with the ancient essence below. It was dizzying. He felt the pain, the sorrow, the anger. It swept over him like a tidal wave, intertwining with their own fear, their joined hopes. A crack erupted across the surface of the grave. The darkness recoiled as if stung, shadows twisting away from the crack as a blinding light burst forth from the fissure. The beasts snarled, clawing towards them, but the light pushed them back. The boy felt strength coursing through him as beams illuminated the area, cutting through the thick shroud of dread. "Keep it going!" Anya screamed, her focus unwavering despite the darkness swirling like a tempest around them. But then, a guttural snarl rose above the chaos, deep and resonant. The advancing shadows staggered, a break in their ferocity. The boy's breath hitched as a figure emerged from within the twisting mass. It was towering, with eyes made of hollow darkness, burning with a terrible hunger that sent chills racing down his spine. "Foolish child!" it roared. The voice dripped with contempt, echoing through him. "You dare to challenge the shadows? They will consume you, body and soul." The boy's heart hammered wildly against his ribs. "Anya," he gasped, feeling the ground beneath them tremble again. What if we can't control it? What if it wants to break free?" The figure laughed, a sound that dripped like poison. "You already have. You have awakened the ancient spirit trapped within. This is only the beginning." He looked at Anya, panic framing her features as realization dawned upon them both. What had they brought forth? With each second ticking away, the shadows rallied, consolidating their forces, and the boy realized in horror that they were not just fighting against the darkness. They were fighting against something far older, a malevolence that could very well consume everything they knew. "Anya!" he shouted, "we have to destroy it before it's too late." But, as he prepared to channel his energy into the grave one last time, the ground split open wide, and the darkness surged forth through the fissure with ferocious speed. "Hold on!" he yelled, knowing time was slipping like sand through their fingers. They stood on the brink of a reality that could forever alter their world. Will we emerge resilient or succumb to the overwhelming shadow? The answer lay just beyond the light. A battle of wills was brewing. The fissure in the ground seemed alive, pulsating like a heart in labor. The boy and Anya barely had time to register their horror before the shadows exploded from the crack, spiraling upward in dark tendrils that writhed and coiled, snapping at the air like hungry serpents. "Anya!" he screamed as he stumbled backward, heart pounding desperately against his chest. The ground trembled more violently now, a chaotic rhythm setting a pace that matched his fear. Anya's hands were still glowing, but it felt like a flickering flame against a growing storm. She turned to him, determination clashing with terror in her eyes. "We need to push back. Channel everything. The light can stop it." With a nod, he channeled energy into his fingertips, a warm glow lacing his palms, and joined Anya. Their magic intertwined, a dazzling thread of hope against the looming darkness. But the shadowy figure looming above them was unfazed, its eyes burning with a hunger that resonated like a death knell. "I am the darkness you have awakened," it bellowed, voice like gravel. "You cannot control me. You are the offering." The shadows began to coil closer, threatening to engulf them. He could feel the weight of despair pressing down on his shoulders, the fear of failure gnawing at him. Would this be where it all ended? "Remember the light," Anya urged, her voice barely piercing through the cacophony of snarls and growls. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, envisioning the warmth of the golden glow that had surged through them. That feeling! It was still there, somewhere beneath the panic. They needed to dive deeper. Tighter. Together! He shouted, locking eyes with her. She nodded, and in that instant they shared a heartbeat, a pulse that resonated with the energy around them, creating a bubble of brilliance around them. The shadows faltered, hesitating, as if caught by surprise. "Now!" he commanded, their voices synchronizing. They thrust their combined force forward, and the radiant light surged like a tidal wave, crashing into the choking darkness. It was a blinding explosion of energy, illuminating everything in every direction, a pure, cleansing force that fought valiantly against the encroaching shadows. But as the light pushed hard, so did the darkness resist. The shadows entwined and lashed back, seeking out the source of light with a fury unmatched. The boy felt the connection falter, their energy waning under the pressure. "Anya! Stay with me!" he yelled, a lump rising in his throat. "I want to let go!" she screamed, fighting through the heavy shadows that pulled at her like claws. The darkness fell back momentarily, shrieking in anguish, but the threat was far from over. Without warning, the ground beneath their feet erupted, and a shadowy arm shot forth, swinging at Anya with speed. "No!" he shouted, the gut-wrenching terror fueling his desperation. In a flash, he lunged forward, throwing his body against hers. They both fell, and the force of the darkness rocketed past, narrowly missing them. "Are you okay?" he gasped, and for a moment, the world ceased spinning at that instant, focusing only on the warmth of her presence. "I think so," Anya panted, brushing herself off as she looked back at the gaping maw of chaos. But as their moment of reprieve lingered, the shadowy figure leaned in closer, distorting through the air. Its laughter was thunderous now, cutting through the crackling light as it taunted. "You think you can hide? You have only postponed your fate." With a swift motion, it slashed through the barrier they had fought so hard to maintain. Cracks splintered all around them, and the light flickered uncertainly, desperately trying to stand against the dark void spreading with sickening speed. Despair threatened to drag him down, but he remembered the faces of those counting on them, friends, family, the entire town. "We have to trust the light," he said, adrenaline pumping through him. But as he turned to face the resurrected darkness, a chilling realization struck him. The voices whispering from the shadows weren't just malevolent, they echoed with familiar tones, twisted yet recognizable. "Mom?" he mumbled, dread pooling at his feet. The shadows seemed to cackle even more, wrapping around him, crawling over his skin like thousands of icy fingers. "What is happening?" Anya's voice trembled beside him, and he wished he could offer her reassurance. As the figure towered over them, the shadows began to shift and morph, taking on faces, names, memories they once held dear. What if the shadows really are those we've lost? The boy's voice dropped to a whisper, barely audible above the storm of chaos. We need to fight it, Anya cried, but he could see the flicker of uncertainty creeping in her expression as the realization settled over them like a dense fog. Was this darkness an enemy or a twisted echo of their past? The ground shook violently again, and a voice echoed, one filled with sorrow and love, manifesting within the shadows. Come home. The boy's heart turned to ice. What if we're not just fighting for our lives? What if the shadows want to pull us back? The battle was only beginning, and the line between light and darkness blurred. What if the fight for survival was a quest for redemption? Could they brave the sweet whisper of the past, or would the shadows forever bind them to their grief? With the last flicker of light waning, they had a choice to make. Will they find victory in unyielding hope or mesmerized by the past's embrace? The choice hung heavily, and the stakes had never felt higher. The shadows twisted and churned, their forms not merely dark, each manifesting memories and emotions. He could see familiar faces swirling in the chaos, edges distorted by the madness. There was his mother, her gentle smile turned sad, and his father's eyes, once so bright, now filled with an unending sorrow. Run! He shouted, instinctually pulling away from the shadows as they stretched for him, grasping for a connection that felt so painfully real. But Anya stood rooted in place. We can't abandon them, she cried, her voice tremulous with fear and determination. They're not real, Anya. They're here to drag us down. The boy could feel his heart racing as he tried to grasp her hand, but she was torn, caught between the pull of their fading memories and the fight ahead. This connection, it means something. Anya's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. We owe it to them to fight. He stepped closer, feeling the warmth of her magic buzzing between them but overshadowed by the darkness creeping in. Anya, listen. We've got to focus on the here and now. If we fall into their trap, then what? Let them have us? She retorted, her anger bursting forth like a flame. But those moments of anger were brief. She glanced back at the shadows, and he could see the struggle etched on her face, the conflict between hope and dread. He didn't want to lose her to that darkness. Let us create a new memory. One that breaks their hold. He took a deep breath, knowing this would be their last chance to turn the tide. Think of something we cherish, something we can build a light around. Anya's eyes widened, as if remembering something profound. The festival. The lights, the laughter, everyone together. Yes. Let us channel that. The warmth, the joy. They concentrated, drawing upon the essence of those brighter days. Golden lights began to flicker around them, woven together like a tapestry, pushing back against the shadows and circling them. Keep going! He yelled, lifting his hands as the light grew brighter, sparking with energy that felt alive. But every ounce of effort was met with resistance, as the shadows began to lash out violently, screeching with rage. No! You cannot outshine me! The dark figure roared, its voice rumbling, drowning out their words. It surged forward, shadows wrapping as if to suffocate their newfound hope. The boy and Anya pressed against the fire growing in their hearts, forcing the light to churn and pulse with every bit of energy they had left. Don't quit! We can do it! Yet the darkness thickened, crawling closer and closer as it fueled on their fears, whispering promises from the depths of despair. Join them, come home, you don't need to fight, no! He screamed, desperately shaking his head, fighting against the pull. We are still alive! We choose our future. But even as he proclaimed this, doubt snaked its way through his thoughts. What if the shadows were right? Could they ever truly escape the grip of grief? Anya, flames still flickering in her eyes, suddenly cried out, then let go of the fear. Embrace our truth! She closed her eyes tightly, and he could see the light around her grow, wholesomely pure, radiant with the strength of their bond. He followed her lead, letting go of worry, relinquishing doubt, and allowed the memories of love, laughter, and life to flood through, transforming their magic into a blinding explosion. The shadows recoiled as their light surged forward, cracking against the darkness. They could feel the balance shift. Something was giving way, something was bending. But just as they thought victory was within grasp, another shadow lashed out, and a chill swept over them, wrapping tighter than before. Was it too late? What do we do now? He gasped, energy waning. Anya looked at him, her expression fierce but waning. We fight. No matter what, we don't give in. With those words echoing in his mind, he gritted his teeth, preparing for one last stand against the darkness closing in. But just as he summoned the last ounce of will, an unsettling whisper pierced through the fray, filled with both nostalgia and menace. Come. Home to the truth. His chest tightened once more, panic rising. What truth? And could they truly withstand what this darkness harbored? Behind them, the ground shook violently, opening wider as they had never seen before. The shadows swirled into a frenzy, and the boy couldn't help but wonder if surrendering to the shadows would unknowingly lead to salvation in that moment. Uncertainty loomed heavier than ever as the shadowed figure reared, ready to strike when they least expected it. Would they fight through the emotional battle ahead, or would darkness pull them into a home they weren't certain they still belonged to? The ground rumbled once more, an angry tremor that felt primal as the shadows writhed like a sea of nightmares, hungry to consume. The boy and Anya stood at the precipice, hearts rearranging in their chests, the stakes impossibly high. Faces pressed into the murky fog of despair, shadows of loved ones flickering just out of reach, taunting yet imploring. Anya, he breathed, an iciness creeping into his voice. What if we don't win? But even as those doubts clouded over him, something bright began to stir deep within him, a spark of defiance igniting against the relentless tide of fear. No! He shook his head, a steely resolve building. This is our moment. We hold the light. The shadows seemed to illuminate at the intensity of his voice, bristling as laughter rippled through the dark. You think you can resist? You're merely echoes of lost souls. Give in, and let the past envelop you. Enough! Anya shouted, stepping closer, her voice a fiery beacon. She squared her shoulders against the oppressive darkness. We decide our future. He looked into her eyes, a mix of determination and despair quelling the lump forming in his throat. Those swirling shadows reflected every moment of their grief, pain, and lost memories, but none were more powerful than the glimmer of love binding them. What if we joined those we lost? He whispered, the crackle of fear beneath his skin edging closer. What if we don't? Anya replied sharply, urgency threading through her words. Are we to walk into a prison of our own hearts? They wouldn't want this. As if to echo her sentiment, a glint of warmth sparked from where their hands had brushed, illuminating their intertwined fingers with a surge of energy, reminding them of the laughter, joy, and community that had once thrived here. We've faced loss together. We can choose to remember those we've lost by living. With renewed strength, they stepped toward the shadows, resolute against the darkness that beckoned them with promises of peace. We can do this, he declared, instinctively tugging her close. We can forge new memories, once filled with light, anchored in hope. In solidarity, Anya cried, their voices cascading together, drowning out the despair. They intertwined their magic, voices rising and intertwining with the old names etched on the gravestones, old friends who had dared to dream, and family members who'd hold hands at the festivals. Memories pulsed through the air, and with every flicker, light chased away darkness, revealing a path woven in shimmering gold. Together, they thrust their combined force toward the curling shadows. The energy radiated, slicing through despair. The boy felt a newfound ferocity, every ounce of anxiety coiling into adrenaline. Now! He yelled. The combined magic erupted like the sun breaking through storm clouds, flooding the streets with pools of golden light. The shadows recoiled, howling in protest, their forms disintegrating under the onslaught of warmth and vibrant energy. Those haunting faces merged as they faded, raw fragments of cherished souls mingling with the air, and the boy swore he caught a glimpse of gratitude in their hollowed eyes. But we need to keep going, Anya urged, racing forward, her eyes alight with determination. Each wave we push forward forms a bridge to their memory. The boy felt the strength of the people behind him, the shared spark igniting the air around them. Anya's face blazed like a supernova, her magic solidifying into a shield against the crashing darkness. Together. It means we fight. The shadows began to splinter, curling away from the faint light that expanded like wildfire, consuming everything that sought to bind them to the past. Not just for ourselves, but for those who came before. The boy screamed into the night, adrenaline thunderous in his veins. Each echo of hope chased away the darkness, replaced with vivid memories the laughter of street fairs, the shared meals of togetherness, the tender embraces. In that moment they embodied the strength of their community, radiating more light than the darkest night could ever. Silence. With one last burst, anchored by their memories, they plunged into the brightness, light shimmering and wrapping around the pulsating shadows. A blinding burst engulfed the night, flash flooding hope through darkness, illuminating what had been lost and transforming despair into celebration. And with that vibrant explosion, the shadows shrieked, fading under the tide of warmth. The creature bellowed its last as the vortex of light expanded, swallowing it whole, until silence returned. As the shades dissipated, an exhale echoed through the town, a sigh shared among the witnesses of their plight. Blank faces twisted into weary smiles, worn hands reached for one another, and together they stood arm in arm, united against the horror now bathing under the light of what remained eternal. The boy wrapped his arms tightly around Anya, their breaths mingling in a moment of tranquil relief amid the haunting of their past. "It's over, isn't it?" he whispered, unsure but hopeful. "Yes," Anya replied softly, her eyes shining. "We choose to live together." As they held each other, gazes drifting toward rooftops kissed by morning light, he knew this was not merely a new dawn for them, it was a rebirth for the entire town, a chance to begin again. They were no longer shackled by shadows but set free to carry their memories forward, lighting the path for others. The weightless warmth enveloped them, and as the sun broke the horizon, illuminating everything anew, a voice whispered in the stillness, "Hope always finds a way, even when darkness reigns." And so, under the same sunlit sky that witnessed their fears, they stepped boldly into a future shimmered with promise, forging ahead together. You need to subscribe now to make sure you don't miss any more incredible stories. This is the moment to show your support. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm, and keep our community thriving. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild conclusion. What did you think? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this ending. It helps more than you know. You're part of this community, and your voice matters.